Why do we need separation of power? Before we look at the constitutional arrangement of Britain, it is important to explore further, why do we even need this doctrine? The first argument that can be provided is similar to the discussion in the previous lecture. If the Revolutionary War is won, then the leaders of the revolution can design a constitution using the doctrine as a fundamental building block. If the system evolves into a modern government, then the doctrine can be used as a benchmark to understand the constitutional arrangement. In both of the cases, the doctrine has a constitutional importance that can be compared to the parliamentary sovereignty and the rule of law. The second important function of the separation is to preserve liberty. The preservation of liberty was the primary emphasis of Montesquieu in arguing for separation of power in his work. Many writers have argued that separating the different types of powers in the state limits the scope of abuse of power and ultimate oppression. Barron uses the counterexample of governmental bodies such as administrative to undermine the pure theory. He states that the tribunal will not undermine liberty if the tribunal is working under delegated powers and cannot be told directly by the government on how to operate. He separates the pure theory from a more pragmatic approach, which seeks to avoid excessive concentrations of power instead of focusing on the separation of power. The third reason for having separation of power is the efficiency of the government. As we see rapid change in our society, in distinct areas of life due to technology and scientific discovery, it is important that the government is able to keep up with the change. How do you think separation of power can be used as a tool to facilitate efficiency in the government? To make the question more complicated, I will argue that if the power is concentrated into a single body of the state, that body can operate more efficiently in adopting the change. The clue to this question is in the work of Montesquieu that we have discussed in the previous lecture. It is important that the government chooses the right kind of change and in doing so upholds the rule of law and the fundamental rights of the citizens. N.W. Barber gives us another interesting reason to use the doctrine of separation of power when studying the efficiency of the government. He states that segregation of powers encourages us to consider various factors that affect the competence of the institutions in the performance of their tasks. This way, we can place responsibility more clearly on the institutions alongside the powers we have vested in them. If we take this view, first of all, the internal composition and skills of an organization must be examined. This investigation reveals the knowledge and experience of the actors working within the organization. Secondly, the scope of the institution's information gathering powers can be assessed, quantified, and reformed. Thirdly, the manner of the institution's decision-making process. This process may be significant. Some decisions may require a precedent approach in solving issues, while others can be argued using new processes which have the virtues of openness and inclusivity. If we can separate the institutions, we can also gauge the outside pressure that influence the working of the institutions. Whether this is considered an advantage or danger will depend on the issue before the decision maker.